Okay. So I'm recording this while final resizing for upload is occurring on a couple of videos. I've got 3 things that I'm about to upload before I upload this video. And in this video, in the description, you will have links to every Pi related video that I've uploaded as far as running those numbers. But what this video will do is kind of explain verbally what I've already kind of put into text in case people don't understand. Maybe I can explain it better. Sometimes the opposite is true. It's easier to explain it in text, but this is one of those things that unless you are specifically familiar with the techniques being used, you're going to get confused. And what I actually want is just for people to be able to look at this thing and say, hey, that's cool. Or, find out what their pareidolia sees in it. So, what is going on? I'll tell you. I had this idea about a year ago. This is between March 14th and April 20th last year, 2025. And I'm not going to rehash or relitigate anything to do with how I came to this idea. But what it is there was a live stream. On this live stream, there was a very well-constructed, well-thought-out computer application running a what you call like a soundboard almost of Matthew McConaughey, which if you've been on this channel for a while, you've seen a whole bunch of these, you know what's up. So basically, you've got this image of Matthew McConaughey with an impression of the voice. It's not even really his voice. And the entire thing that they're using is like a grand total, I think, of about 15 seconds of video from the Lincoln commercials where he's sitting in the cafe waiting for the rain to stop. And other than a few spots here and there that they've done little special bits, the actual thing itself starts from the Aeronaut's existential crisis, where he sits there and has this inner monologue of all these ridiculous, absurd things. So they turned this into a live stream where he recites Pi. It was the second year, I believe, that they had done it. The previous year, he just recited Pi. Last year was legendary. And unfortunately, this year was kind of a letdown. But you can't do nothing about it. That's how do you follow up the best first album ever, right? The sophomore effort is going to be an issue no matter how good it is. So there's a lot of really great stuff about the current stream. It's absolutely insane. The stuff that these guys are doing, it's wild. So this idea I had was that I was watching all of these digits of Pi go by on the screen, and I'm kind of taking note of the number of decimal places. Now, understand, I also realize that this is kind of in itself is a like a bias confirmed kind of we're reading into it what we want to, but we know that we are. So we're looking at what we express as the unending, non-repeating decimal places of Pi as these numbers, but that number just represents something else. Those numbers are probably not even 100% accurate, because nothing that we ever calculate seems to come up to 100% accurate. So I'm watching all these numbers go by. I'm recognizing that the counting system of how many decimal places is in the what was it, like you call it a base 10, right? Like it's a decimal number system, whereas binary is 2, trinary is 3, right? Quaternary is 4. You go 0 through 3, and then it's a whole thing. So this watching these numbers go by, seeing so many coincidences, finding out exactly how many times the specific combination of 69420 occurs successively like that. No gaps, no spacing, within the first million digits of Pi. And it's like, Oh, there's quite a few. There's a lot. And there's other instances of 6942, but not 69420. And there's instances and numerologies that show up because it's like you've got the 424,242nd spot ends a sequence of numbers that literally just goes 424, or no, in this case, that beginning with the 4 starts with a 2. So the 424, 242 goes 24242424. And the thing is, like, realizing that and seeing this, I went and looked at some other things and things that people have noticed. So yes, this is going to sound superstitious, but this is kind of the reasoning of how I arrived at the temporal array of pi, which obviously exists because it got made. And we'll get to that. So I realized, because I went back and looked, and it turns out that the 42nd decimal place of pi is where the first instance of a 6 and a 9 together occurs. Then there's the 144th place, which is 12 squared, and also can be significant in certain religions' numbers, is the first instance of the subsequent 666, which occurs a few times in there. Everything occurs a few times in there. So it's not like, oh, that showed up, it matters. No, dude, you can put your freaking mom's birthday in. You're going to find it 3 times in the first million places of pi. There's a lot. And the thing is, you could theorize about that. Why would an seemingly, as far as we can tell, transcendentally unending, non-repeating string of decimal place numbers contain everything in the universe? Well, what is pi? How do we derive pi? What is it that we do with it? Well, it has to do with radii, circles, calculating volume and area of spheres and circles, calculating circumferences. So everything Pythagorean, mathematically speaking, involves pi on one way or another, right? So let's say our universe is contained within a gigantic event horizon. We could use pi and the distance to that horizon to calculate the size of the apparent universe, or of the particle horizon, or the event horizon, or whatever it is. But the whole thing is, that could be, why is all the information in the universe encoded within the digits of pi? Well, because the digits of pi describe circular, spherical type environments, such as the inside of a black hole, where all of information that falls in is kept and stored. Even if it's completely just packed into an unreadable sense, that information is nonetheless present, right? So I see all these different things, and I start noticing that a lot of instances of 6-9 and 9-6 occurring at places whose digits either begin or end, or the place number begins or ends with a 2-4 or a 4-2. And I'm like, okay, think about it. 6 and 9, right? Oh, they fit together. But it's a flip of each other. The way that we view their digits is a flip, right? So let's take, instead of 6-9 and 9-6, let's take the 2-4 and the 4-2, right? We already have this cultural thing that talks about 42 being the meaning of life, if you're into T.S. Eliot, or the ultimate answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything, from Douglas Adams. And if you look at the 42nd place, it's 69. 69, of course, we make as a sexual reference. That's what it is. Although also looks like a yin-yang. Also, I think there's an astrological sign that kind of resembles that. So it's there in the public consciousness already. So with this flippy-dippy idea of the numbers and the 2-4-4-2 and the spots, right? Then there's another place where there are 6 consecutive 9s. That's called the Feynman point, where he said he wanted to memorize out. It's like 987th place of pi or something. And you get out there, and even there, 987. Like I'm pretty sure that's where it is, but it's something like that. So you get to this point, and there's just like 6 instances of the digit 9 in a row, and then it continues on non-repeating. I don't think this occurs ever again. But I was like, 6 9s, 6 9 4 2 2 4. Well, at the 424, 242 point, you get 2424, 2424. Okay, 424s. What is 4 times 24? 96. Okay. There's probably, if I recall correctly, at the 96. Well, wait a minute. 96, isn't that the backward of 69? Fuck. It's all related. It's numerologically or number theory wise, the numerals keep doing these things, right? Once is an isolated incident. Twice is a coincidence. Coincidence. Two incidents, right? A single incident, two incidents, right? When you have three, you begin establishing patterns. One of the things that I've noticed with pi, when looking through all these digits, is you will have these places where you get straight up juked by the math. You get messed with. There will be an instance where you have what appears to be a three-peat happening. You're about to establish a pattern. This thing has happened like this, and then every so often, and this happens again like exactly the same. And the third time that you predict it will happen, it begins first step, second step, and the third one's like L instead of fucking Q or whatever, right? It's wrong. You're expecting it to go, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it goes 1, 2, 3, 5, 4, 6. All the digits are still there, but they get mangled or something. Like, it cannot allow that repetition. It cannot allow the third time, because then the pattern repeats. And you can't have it happens 3.14 times. So noticing things like this happening, I wanted to come up with this idea popped into my head. It's like, oh, okay, wait. So what other ways could this be expressed? I would love, I like the Sachs spiral. There's something really mystical and weird about the way that the prime numbers do these curvatures. If you just graph them out in a square spiral, you start having these legit data point curves of parabola and stuff happening. There's something to it. Even though the pattern itself is obvious, you cannot find anything that explains it. You can just say, no, man, but it is obviously there. Now, granted, this is how we manipulate into a thing and then in that pattern. So maybe it's possible that this is an artifact of consciousness and not an actual, pattern in nature. But we are out of nature. We come from nature. And our consciousness is part of the thing. So then it's like, okay, so is it really an artifact of consciousness, or is it just these two Shankara stones are glowing when they get close to each other, even though neither is aware of the other and nobody knows how to explain it? But it's obviously happening. That's what I keep coming to. That's like faith. And that helped me understand faith a little bit better, because I've been really hard pressed to believe some shit that doesn't sound real. Now, there's things that I can see proof of, things that I'm like, oh, okay, well, there may be something to that Shroud of Turin. Therefore, I'll consider the possibility that some of this stuff might actually be true. And the more you look into it, like, oh, okay, there's some crazy stuff going on. So the universe is far more, and it is not what we think and all this other stuff. So I'm like, why can't pi be included in that? So I've done research into things. The references to pi get made in sacred geometry. The sacred geometry comes to either, drawing out. I did a lot of stuff back in the day with rotating. I drew out a very large circle of life, and then I got the high contrast of the lines, and then I rotated by 15 degrees each time. And somebody else did this too, but I created my own just to verify. And it becomes quite fractal. It becomes like Sierpinski circles, and some very interesting shapes become visible to your pareidolia. It's like an LCD crystal, like the readouts on like the Tiger LCD games. There's a bunch of little things, and they all can be fit together, and the way that they move allows you to put just about anything on it that you want. And you can use your imagination to project, meaning or shape onto a surface like that. That's what kind of the real thing with sacred geometry is that you draw this out. You're in your mind, it's there because you made it, you drew it out. It's part of your spatial memory. And then you can gaze at it and you can use it as a visualizer. So I had already found that if you had Metatron's cube drawn out and you were to rotate at least one like 30-degree iteration, you could draw out the entire modern Aramaic Hebrew alphabet just using the guides of the lines and some rulers across the top in a couple spots. All the curves in the current, when you look at the classical Hebrew font, the letters as presented, in what, like I said, it's effectively, it's actually Aramaic alphabet. Those letters, the way that they are drawn, conform to sacred geometry. There is pi and there is phi in all of that. Every single one is easily renderable within Metatron's cube. So in the esoteric studies, they talk about Metatron as the lesser tetragrammaton, and that means that there is some aspect of the tetragrammaton in the name of Metatron. And if you look up the name of Metatron, how they spell it in Hebrew is based on a Greek version, and it is not the correct name. I figured out the correct name. That's the name of the alternate channel that I used to run back in 2009. I've only got the few songs on it. That's where the Rubik's Cube and the original playlist of Circadia's final show are located. I'm not going to say it, not going to spell it, but suffice to say that that channel name transliterated to Hebrew gematriates to 314, which gematriates to 26 or 8. And therefore it all gematriates the same as the tetragrammaton. And it can be pronounced with a little bit of a to it, but it contains a hey yo hey, and it numerically gematriates to pi before gematriating to the tetragrammaton. So, having had all of this specific subjective context on my part for years now, decades, I'm watching this, not Matthew McConaughey reciting digits of pi to the millionth place with all the fun Easter eggs and everything else. And I have this idea based on looking at some of these coincidences independently that if there's 4 24s, what could that mean? Well, what if you laid out a matrix of the numbers, the first million digits of pi, at 24 digits per line, 24 lines of this per page, and each page then as a square, you could use a Unicode font that is a monospace, monotype. The other thing, the original idea was that you would replace each numeral digit on the font with a full tile of a grayscale color, so that like there's a couple different ways you could look at it. How would you encode the numbers? I don't know. Let's guess. You could start at 0 at black and 9 at white and gradate every 10%. Or you could reverse that. 0 is white, 9 is black. Or put 0 at the end. 1 is white, 0 is black. That makes most sense to me. Or 1 is black, 0 is white, all the way through. However you want to do it. Now, in the iteration that I have, this was done by someone just on a whim. They said, hey, what was that you were talking about? And whipped it together real quick. That's the person that does the coding for the Matthew McConaughey app that runs on the live stream. So what I ended up getting was the numbers, but the numbers themselves, correctly placed, and everything was accurate through, and it was really cool. The numbers themselves were colored with the grayscale. It wasn't exactly the tile thing, but eventually, maybe at some point I'll do it. But the other thing was, when I went to make efforts to put this together myself a year ago, it was like the universe was fighting back against it. Stuff got crazy. I got distracted. One of my cats died. Like there was always something that was getting in the way of me ever being able to figure out how to even get this down and implement it. And eventually, over time, a year later, actually it was closer to it was the Advent stream when this began. And I think this around the Valentine restart of that stream for the full-time infinite stream that is running now, was around the time then that I got the video of the million digits in this temporal array. So what the thing was is the human eye, from what I'd learned in over the years, the human eye and the brain have a minimum recognition of fluid motion at about 24 frames per second. So 24 micro movements per second will look like fluid motion to a human eye. So that is how you animate. Some video games and other things run even slower, and you can tell because that's where the things are like, that's not fluid motion. 24 frames per second minimum, you're going to see motion. So I've studied how fighting games are done. I've never put together a Mugen or anything like that. But when I was in high school, I was drawing flipbook art of Mortal Kombat fatalities and stuff, just drawing it out and being able to watch the animation. At that time, the computer technology and the ability to animate like that was a commercial only. You had to work in the business. That shit was $6,000 to get the license to use the program kind of thing. And now it's not. So 24 by 24 lines and rows by 24 frames per second. What would happen at 24 seconds of that? Well, it turns out that the 24-second mark at that point would be the 24 to the fourth power. Not 96, but 331,776th place. The 331,776th place, I think, ends in a 9 or a 4 right before a 2. I think it's either a 9-6 or a 4-2 that goes there. Between that and the next one moving. Well, what I got was the first million places because the most commonly available text version is the first million places. And I did confirm on this video, this pi array that I was given, I did move to that point and was able to locate the individual frame of the numbers that are located at that point. I was able to trim it to a 24-second spot just to have that cubic time crystal thing going on there. But it didn't show anything in particular in that way. I received one in the other number gradation too. So one of them 0 was black and the other 0 was white. I believe it runs from 0 to 9. So 9 is the opposite end from 0 on this. And it could be that this is the natural way of things because the way we think of it with this 1 being the start of the decade and 10 being the end of the decade may actually be incorrect. We might have, as in musician terms, got confused on where the 1 is. So, and that's a funny joke because the Metatron is associated with the Sandalphon, and the Sandalphon is the Lord of Song, Adon Shear, and the idea of the two nearly indistinguishable, etc. You can take all of this mysticism over the years and centuries that it fits with this a little bit. But so we went to a million places. That gives you a little bit more to look at. I had a suggestion of the array of things. This is before I figured out how to do these for myself on CapCut. Prior to that, really didn't have anything on my phone that would allow me access to do this. So what happened was I had the center of things on the screen where everything lines up. So from where I've got on the screen here, you would have one square of pi and it would begin here. And you have another one mirrored, so it would begin here, but it would run this way. So we were running numbers out like this. And then we would have a mirror flipped version with the alternate opposite colors. What happened though is that when this was put together, the request was misunderstood and these two were instead flipped like this. So you've got up in the upper corner, there we go, pi numbers running from here to here, right, until here. And they are the inverse color scheme from the ones down here that are running from here to here. And actually scrolling through and picking any given random frame would give you this kind of kaleidoscopy image, but that also kind of looked like ASCII art of some kind of random creature. Like it was like Pokédex images of something or whatever. Each one almost looked like a face. Now, granted, I knew this was full on pareidolia. And I recreated it with the correct mirroring, the way I thought about it, since I discovered the ability to do this with CapCut and got good at it. I put that together and viewed that, and it was still very compelling. But ultimately, I realized it wasn't, I was overthinking it. It was too much. Let's just see if it tiles. And it kind of does. It kind of does. It's not as interesting of a design as what you get when you have the other, incorrect mirroring had a more interesting look to it. And that's probably why that's what I got. But ultimately, as a couple days ago, I put together the just regular tiling. I took the one I think was the 0 was black, and I just ran it. I made 4 of them, and then I saved that, and then I made 4 of that, and I saved that, and I made a 3 by 3 by 3 of that, which unfortunately has a little grid lines, but doesn't really make any difference. All you can see there is that there's some very interesting brightness lines that occur. Some places where it's like, for being a somewhat uniform tile, there shouldn't be an overarching appearance of something moving around. And yet there does appear to be, unless it's just a trick of your eyes. But again, this might be something that is able to be used as a pareidotic visualizer, a hypnagogue, if you would, for being able to use your imagination to view. I don't know. So anyways, I put that together. I viewed all of that. I said, wow, that's pretty interesting. And I uploaded the shorts that are up now. These will be linked in the description. So then what I decided to do is I was like, I want to find a way to false colorize this. I want to have this black and white information and this grayscale information, and I want to find a way to technicolor that. So what I first did was I did the hyperstabilization. Those will be linked. There's a hi-fi and a lo-fi version. What this is a 2x2 tile. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of the full 24 by 24 pies. They are just tiled. There's no mirroring. That is then stabilized. The stabilized version is stabilized, and the stabilized version gets stabilized. And then I tacked them on one after the other. And you can see you have just the numbers running. Then there's some. Then there's like, ah! And the third one is like, woo! It's pretty crazy. Now, here's the deal. The stabilization is on my phone. It is kind of an algorithm. I don't know that it's real AI, even though they keep using these terms and things like that. But what it does is it examines the pattern. It tries to take disparate frames that are obviously shaking around and fit them up so that there's motion. And what you have in this motion at 24 frames per second is that the apparent shapes caused by the light and dark gradations of the numbers give the appearance of slight depth, and that these shapes in the clumping of the numbers actually persist but move around relative to where your frame of reference of the 24 by 24 is. And when you ignore that frame of reference and just stabilize it, that's where the thing starts going, wah, and at the same time, there's this thing in the center that's just doing this. And I don't mean the literal center, because when you get to the colorized one, yes, there is a prismatic thing in the beginning of it. You can see the double rainbow. There's a little bit in the center. There's a big arc at the outside. That does fade once it goes into the full motion of the stabilization. That goes away at that point. And what you're seeing at that point is you see these number things moving around, but you realize as it stabilizes that these things, it's just going from frame 1 to frame 2, and then from frame 2 to frame 3, and trying to interpolate where they're at. Is that if this shook from this, where it's supposed to be like this, we're going to pull them together. And by doing that, you get this weird Brownian motion, sense of depth by the grayscale. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. So what I did was I took that in its raw form, and the lo-fi version came out of taking the full size 1080 square, shrinking it down to a 240 square at low quality so that it gets as grainy and pixely as possible, but maintaining strict 24 frames per second. And then taking that into a different program, because I have different for my compression versus for my production. So I super shrunk it, and then I took it, opened it, made it export in 1080, 24 frames per second. And then I took that and shrunk that down. And I did this like 3 times so that the lo-fi one, the numbers are so blurry, they just look like little dots of the grayscale. And works pretty good. So then what I did was I took the hi-fi version of it. Or no, what is that? How did I derive? Yeah, no. So I took the lo-fi version of it. I stretched it big one final time. I applied a prismatic body filter, body effect in CapCut. And what that did was basically give everything kind of a rainbow sheen. That's where you get the grid of squares. That just appears. I had to do a whole bunch of adjustments to even get it to be visible like that. So once it goes into the motion of the stabilization, again, that effect disappears. So then instead of having it attempt to just use the square grid of what's there, it's got this motion. So you have the stabilization, finding the patterns of movement in the number clumping, trying to force those into kind of more stable position. As the video goes, they get more and more stabilized until the thing is just showing you these things that are doing this little, and it's like there's a pulse to it. There's a pulse to these like swishes that you see in the Brownian motion at 24 frames per second. So, and also music that plays to 96 beats per minute will pulse in the same time with that at 24 frames per second. 96, 69, 24, 42. Isn't that crazy? So having done that, I got all the rainbowy stuff on it. I ended up doing the full version of what became the Magic Eye Pi. And all the description of that is in there. Now that I've explained what everything means, I think you'll understand. I ended up adding the base layer of that video is back to the high-res number grid with the stabilizations, but no in-frame full motion, just it's the full screen. So then I synced the high def or the hi-fi and then the lo-fi on top of that. And each of those has its own separate, the hi-fi one, the splicing in and it's on a setting called soften, I believe. Where you have the option of doing like burn or diffusion, how it filters through the two layers. In this way, you get the rainbow effect without it going straight down to numbers, because half of those diffusion filter effects, how it, you go to full color burn or whatever, all it does is blank everything out but the numbers again. So I made it so that you keep the gray and you see all this stuff, and this is all pixelation, compression, stretch, compression, stretch, compression, stretch, until everything kind of has a field that it's playing with. But the initial information is still present in that fluctuation. So then having stabilized, prismatified, taken the prismatification and refiltered it so that you can still see the number grid underneath of it just a little bit. So you can kind of have a reference point to the motion you're seeing with the numbers that were under there. And then took the lo-fi over top of that using Dodge. And then Dodge! That's what you get from the Magic Eye Pi. And then what happened was I accidentally somehow in the process ended up losing 5 seconds off the end of the enhanced versions. So that's why you get to see the last like 5 seconds of the end of the million digits of pi in the final third tier stabilization. And you get to see what it was working with. So then I added the entirety of the original, sped up to 49.6x. I called it 50x because that fits with the end of the music, where the end of the music is at a point, the song itself has just a little clip off the beginning because the intro piano strike is a little coarse. So I clipped the beginning of that. So all you hear is the end of the piano notes, no attack. It fades in by 10 seconds. It fades out for 10 seconds at the very end of it. And I clipped it up to the end of the actual sound so there's no fade out on dead air. This length then is the 456 at 90% speed of the regular song speed. I added some reverb to it, just, slowed with reverb. So it just so happened that the 50x speed of the fullness of the initial seed of the entire experience, 50x at the end, fit that little gap. And what it also meant at 90% speed, pure coincidence here, is that every time the music changes significantly in the song is about that 112, 224, 336, all the way through it. And so every time the music makes a major change, the screen makes a major change. Independent, pure coincidence. This was never part of the plan. It just does that. Weird. So anyways, this is what I arrived at. Now, overnight, I ended up being up till 6:30, 6:45 this morning, working on a further iteration. So the latest one will be having slowed down 50% because that's the best I could do to actually, I didn't want to do a 0.2. I wanted to do a 0.25. It wouldn't let me. So 0.5 down and then 0.5 down on that, you get 0.25. So I slowed it by half, made it 60 FPS. Slowed that by half, made it 60 FPS. Stabilized that. Saved it, took the saved stabilization of that, which stabilized it on a black background. Now there's barely any movement, but it is there. But I did the black frame stabilization on this with the full color, the actual Magic Eye Pi that I'd made. So I took that, put it in the black bar to stabilize. It barely moves, but it's an interesting effect that is quite different from the rest of, any of the other stabilization. So I got that at quarter speed, brought it up to half, 60 FPS save, stabilized it, brought it to 1x speed, 456 total time, 60 FPS, stabilized it. That was all 720p, stretched it to 1080, 24 FPS, and then used my compressor to resave the same file, drop the size down. It loses a little bit in the color and the fidelity. This works toward what I'm doing. That's the whole point. So at this point, what that video is something that has had 6 different stabilizations run on it. And all of these different color layers getting added in, or the color and the diffusion and the filter, the dodge. And then at the end of it, of course, I added there's eyeball behind the stable. Well, what I did was I took the motion stabilized black bar version of the seat of the original, so that it's not just running the square. The square's kind of doing this a little bit, and when it goes nuts, it really goes nuts. And I just put my eye, the eye. So it works as a work of art. It's got all of this crazy stuff in it. Now, having restabilized on the black field again, the scene with the eye gets even crazier. And so there it is. That's what it is. I've now got that complete. I'm waiting on they're probably done by now. Waiting on the saving of the same size but compressed file size, so I can upload of the original hi-fi and lo-fi of the Magic Eye Pi without any effects. So I'm going to finish this here. This is ridiculous it's taken this long, but that's kind of what's going on with it. Hard to type that out. I hope this has been understandable. There is a method to what I did. It is not just some pixels that were clashed together, and it is sure as shit not artificial intelligence. All I've done is find a way to array pi as a time crystal, digits of pi as a time crystal, and express it in a way that makes the visible motion visibler. That's what it is. That's what I've been going for. And I found that the more I garble and mangle it, the more this Brownian motion comes out. This is not invented by it. If you notice, the Brownian motion follows, because I made sure that there's an overlay with the digits. You can see it moving around through. You can see the reference for where these things are, and you can realize that it looks like it's letting off into the distance underneath the surface or whatever. You watch it through. Then I say this, the thing that got me to do the super slow-mo to restabilize was I just slowed the video down to quarter speed on Magic Eye Pi and watched this crazy movement happen. And I was like, wow, okay, so we're gonna dig into that. So that's what it is. You'll see it when it gets uploaded. So anyways, check the description. Everything will be in there.